Welcome to this strategy video for Axis and Allies, Spring 1942, 2nd edition. Today I'm going to be going over Great Britain strategy for turn 1. Now at this point in the game, other players have taken their turns. The Russians have gone, the Germans have gone, so we're not quite sure what the board is going to look like, but you can almost be guaranteed that you're not going to have these ships that you had on the setup chart, right? Because Germany's going to take them out. So the board will likely look something more like this for you without as many ships on the board. So Great Britain's pretty interesting because you don't have really very much territory on the map, but they're a very important power, and if Great Britain itself falls, that's really, really bad for the Allies. So for me, Great Britain is primarily a naval power, and you might be able to see that I like navies, as shown with the Graf Zeppelin strategy. But there's really not much landmass for you to defend, so I like to build ships primarily with the UK. But that only works well if you have a US ally who can be depended upon, because if you don't, you're going to need to build a lot more offensive power on land yourself. Like, you're going to want tanks here and artillery, and you're going to want to build more fighters in the UK. Now, if you have a competent US ally, what I like to do on the first turn is just get these 3 infantry right here, and that's just to max out the hit points on India, right? So you can build up to 3 things here, so we're going to build 3 infantry right there on India. And in a less conservative strategy, would be building heavier hitting things like tanks or artillery, and then spending the rest on, say, a fighter in the UK, right? But I like this strategy because you start with 31 IPCs, the 3 infantry cost you 9, and then we're just going to bank the other 22, right? And what this is going to do is allow us to save up for a fleet, because in the second turn we're going to another about 30 IPCs, right? And then we're going to buy us a nice carrier fleet and, have fighters on it and build a destroyer, and that's going to let us take out this new German Navy that's built up right here. So that's it for purchasing. There's not really much to say there. It's either build light and save money, or build some artillery or tanks and a fighter over here, right? And that's pretty much it. There's nothing really else to cover there for Britain. So let's get into combat moves. The combat moves are going to be pretty light here for Great Britain. Now, you definitely need to take this destroyer and send it here, right? We need to take out this cruiser before it unites with this fleet down here. And you're also going to send in this fighter, right? Boom. And we're going to send this fighter over here just to auto-kill that transport. And Germany sacrificed that. That's fine for Germany. That thing's not going to survive anyway, because even if you put it over here, they're just going to kill it. So you might as well have used it to make that landing right there. Anyway, we'll also go ahead and send the bomber here, just because we don't want to lose that fighter. So we want to really make sure we knock out that cruiser in round 1 and don't have to deal with that anymore. Now, as far as this transport goes, this is kind of tricky. If the board looks like this and there are just German ships everywhere, there's not really much he can do, right? He can come down here. He's going to die to the submarines or the battleship. You can try and hide him up here. He's still going to die to the subs because they're 2 away. There's nothing to do with him. So what I would do is just take this guy from Eastern Canada, move him over, right? And now he's over here. And then he's going to come on to this transport and land in England. But that's going to be in the non-combat phase, right? So for now, it's just going to be combat moves. So that transport's just going to stay there for right now. And this is the only combat we'll be conducting other than that, which is also technically a combat. We're just going to auto-kill it, right? Now, if you want, you can do a combat over here as well. If you're doing a kill Japan first strategy, what you're going to do is take this fleet and this fighter from Egypt and take it all on top of this fleet right here and try to take out these Japanese battleships. Now, I'm not really a fan of doing this because, yeah, you're going to take that out, but you're going to lose a lot. This is a tough customer to crack right here. They've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hit points, and you'll be bringing in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? But they've got much higher rolls than you. They've got three fours, right? Battleship, two fighters. You're coming in with 4 3s. You know, it's not that great of odds to spend your whole fleet on. So I'm not a fan of doing that. I prefer the kill Germany first strategy. And if not one of those, at least a more conservative strategy than just going all out against Japan. But again, that depends on what the United States is doing. What the British do during the combat phase, just like during the phase where they're picking what units they want to buy, you have to have an understanding with your American friend as to what your strategy is going to be. So for now, we're going to say the strategy is not to kill Japan first. So we're going to move these ships. We're not going to move these ships into combat right now, right? So for combat, this is it. Alright, so now we need to talk about this battle. Now, this battle is a little tricky because of the units in it. So there's a submarine on the German side, but you have a destroyer. So as long as you have a destroyer, your planes can hit the submarine. The submarine, however, cannot hit your planes. So the goal of this battle is really to eliminate the cruiser. So you've got a 50-50 chance of getting 2 hits on your first roll. The Germans are probably going to get 1 hit. They have more than a 50-50 chance to score 1 hit. So let's say you only get 1 hit on your first roll. Now, the Germans are also going to get a hit, so you're just going to kill your destroyer because you don't want to lose aircraft in this fight. Now, the Germans have a choice here. They can either kill the sub and continue fighting, or they can kill the cruiser and now the fight's over because you can't hit the sub. Now, the cruiser is worth more to them, so let's say they kill the sub. So now you have a choice to make. I would say that if Germany did not do Graf Zeppelin, then what you would want to do is just retreat because you don't want to lose your fighters to this battle. So since Germany did do Graf Zeppelin, this cruiser can end up linking up with the fleet down here, right? Because these guys are all going to move here next turn. So in this case, I'm going to say actually continue the fight. And let's just say you get unlucky here and lose a fighter, so that sucks. But you're going to have annihilated this entire fleet, since you're probably going to get another hit that turn. And your bomber is going to land back in Britain. And if the board looks a little different, it's because I'm redoing this little segment afterwards, since I wanted to go over exactly what you wanted to do there. So the goal is to not lose planes, but you can risk it if Germany built Graf Zeppelin, because that cruiser is not really important if they did not build a navy, but we don't want it linking up down here and then threatening the aircraft carriers and stuff you're going to build later in the game. So that's it for that. Alright, now it's time to do non-combat moves for Great Britain. So first things first, let's just land all of our fighters back in Great Britain, and the bomber as well, of course. So now they're chilling there, right? We're going to move this infantry over into Eastern Canada. They're going to load onto this transport, and now you've got some options, right? So you can send the transport down here to Africa, say land in the Sahara or in French West Africa, but given the amount of firepower down here, I would say go here and just get these forces in Great Britain. That way we're defended against any sort of sea lion assault, and we're also prepared for a landing, say, in Norway on our own, or to support an allied one in northwestern Europe or France. Now, this transport can move here, right, because there's a sub, and that doesn't block his movement, and he'll get killed next turn, but he would die anyway to some fighter or whatever else the Germans decided to throw at it. So in this situation, there's just no saving this transport. So let's just get those guys to England and be done with it. And we'll build transports later when we need them. So I actually forgot a combat move that's pretty important even if you're not killing Japan first. So that is to go with this cruiser only. 1, 2, move here and take this fighter. 1, 2, same path, right? And what we're doing here, we're bringing both of them in to make sure we kill this destroyer. That way that transport dies, because that's going to really slow down the Japanese. So the destroyer probably won't even hit you, and then the transport automatically dies. So this cruiser's stuck here, but the fighter can land right here. Or here. Which would actually be the better spot, right? So now we've got a nice stack of guys here defending these two fighters, and that's not going to be threatened by the Japanese. So don't forget to do this move because that's going to slow down the Japanese. So now let's get into the rest of the non-combat moves. So with Egypt, if something absolutely terrible happens with Russia or in India, you can just totally abandon it. But as far as turn 1 goes, we're going to try and reinforce it, right? And if we need to pull these guys out for some reason to give serious aid to Russia or India, we can do it later. So for now, we're going to move that there. We're going to take this guy, move him up. We're actually going to take this aircraft carrier, move it over here for protection, along with the transport, right? Now, note that this fleet right here can no longer reach it, and that's how it's protecting it. The fighters, however, could. So what we're going to do is take this fighter and land him here, just to make sure that they don't come in and try to get a cheap kill on this. And this is important because that'll really help deter them. And also, they kind of need those fighters to attack the land anyway, so your fleet should be safe over there. It's possible that they could still come and kill it, but it's unlikely. Another thing you can do, too, is double move this tank down if you want to load him on the transport so that next turn you can take him to India. And like I said, that kind of depends on whether or not you want to really hold in Egypt or if you want to just kind of let it fall, right? I mean, that's really up to you and your US and Russian allies mainly as far as what your African strategy is, because we don't really know what's going to go on here. It's kind of a strange area to fight in because it's not particularly valuable, but it has some strategic value. So for now, we're just going to assume that you're going to play conservatively and leave this tank here and reinforce that, right? So Persia, obviously, we're just going to move that guy right there. Now in Burma, we could pull back. We could leave him here to avoid a walk-on. We could move him here. I like to move him here just to give the Japanese a little extra stuff to fight, especially since we took out that transport. That'll just really help the U.S. hold on to China for a bit longer. One thing to remember, too, is that this fighter that you landed here can be landed in Russia next turn, and as well as the one that killed this transport, right? We could have gone 3-4 and landed in West Russia instead of 3-4 back to Britain. So keep that in mind, that it's Britain's job to some extent to keep Russia in the game if things go horribly wrong. So we're definitely going to load this guy onto the transport to get him into the action faster, right? And as far as this, if we're not engaging this Japanese fleet over here, what we're going to do actually is just totally bail, right? So we're just going to take this fleet, we're going to grab a guy from Eastern Australia, move here, and grab him in the transport as well, and then we're over here. And then next turn, we're going to be coming around onto the Atlantic side, and that'll be useful a few turns later once you have a fleet built up. Plus, you've got two guys coming in along with you. It might seem kind of weird to empty this out like that, but the thing is, there's no Japanese transports in range right now, and the Japanese have little interest in coming down here to get these IPCs just because there's so much to do over here. So I would rather take those infantry and have them do something later in the game on the Atlantic side than leave them there. So this fleet is in the sea zone below this little chart right here. The submarine can come attack you in some suicide mission, but he probably won't and would probably lose, which is what makes it a suicide mission. So that is it for non-combat moves for Britain as far as this particular way of playing goes. So we've got our fleet defended over here out of the way. It's going to move back later. We've got India stacking a little bit. We've got a couple units reinforcing there. Britain's looking pretty good. And then finally, we are going to take the three guys we built, put them on India. So now we have a pretty solid defense there, right? And at some point, you may want to build a tank, right? And not save all of your IPCs because you might want some heavier firepower behind all these infantry. But no one's going to come in on you on turn 1, so this is fine for now. Just keep that in mind because we did save 22 IPCs, quite a lot, for building a fleet later. And that's going to matter a lot in later turns. Okay, so just a quick addendum before we end. You don't actually need to load this guy this turn. There's no reason to do that. It's just going to entice the Japanese to come try and attack you more. Now, next turn, what you can do is load this guy. And you can either move here and put him into Egypt, or you can actually take guys from Egypt and put them into India. I don't necessarily recommend doing that. It kind of depends on what Germany's doing. You might notice that I'm not really too concerned with Egypt. In this edition of the game, Africa is not really that important. There's not that much money here, and it'll take a while for the Germans to get it all. And in the global edition, Italy relies on Africa a lot for income, but Germany doesn't really have a problem with that, so it's not a huge deal. Also, if you notice, the Americans, once they build their fleet here, they could just instantly land a bunch of guys in Africa on a single turn. So kind of whatever the Germans do here to control Africa is kind of ultimately fruitless because the Allies are going to be able to take it back. So I wouldn't concern yourself too much with it. And the only other thing is I would actually not move this guy here because you don't really want to give free walk-ons like we did it over here because of particular reasons about baiting the tanks. But you want the Japanese to be forced to split up their guys more. So in this case, instead of sending one infantry just here to take it for free, they'll have to send the artillery too, or maybe something else. Now, you'll see in the Japanese video that maybe it might be a better idea to actually retreat him back here to protect him, because this guy is going to die anyway, and not really slow down the Japanese very much at all. If you didn't do this, stacking this with Russia and Britain, it might be worth leaving him there for sure. But because we know the Japanese aren't going to be attacking here, they're going to have enough forces to levy against us to where this guy's pretty much irrelevant. And you'll see why in the next video. But we're just going to leave him there just because that's kind of more normal and a better idea to not just give up free land. And the one guy doesn't really matter that much. Alright, so that's it for Great Britain. There's not really too much to talk about with them. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time for Japan, which is a lot more interesting. Thanks for watching.